This is the E-commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the E-commerce Edge podcast with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Todd Abraham from Innovos Solutions and Flowforge to the podcast.
Thank you, Jason.
Welcome, Todd.
Pleasure to join you.
My absolute pleasure. Look, sorry to cut you off. It's my pleasure to have you along for the ride today. And you said you are based in Malaysia currently, right?
We're a business that is in Singapore, but I made a decision about 10 years ago now to move across the border with my young family and be based here. We miss Singapore dearly, but for economic reasons, it just makes more sense to be in Malaysia. So here we are. Malaysia, truly Asia, as they say.
Very nice. Absolutely love it. Yeah, as somebody who's a digital nomad and has been a digital nomad for many years and is now based in Mexico, I totally understand the desire to get to a place where it works for you financially, economically, access to key markets, access to capabilities, business capabilities, staff, teams, connectivity becomes a real key question for those of us that work in the digital space. So there's lots of considerations that come into this when you decide where you're going to at least plant a bit of a base to operate from, right?
You know what? I'll tell you a small story before we get deep into it. I think I could call myself an OG, a digital nomad OG, because in 1997, I was in Bali, Indonesia, kicking off an exporting business with a good friend, shipping furniture and handicrafts back to Canada. But we were every day in the internet cafe, the only place we could find connectivity, on rented computers, getting it done.
Wow, very exciting. You obviously, if you've spent most of your life in Canada, then weather has to be a big attraction in Malaysia versus Canada
especially
as well.
Time of year. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm lucky in that. So I live in Mexico, but we're back visiting family in New Zealand for a few weeks. And I lived in New Zealand for 28 years before we moved to Mexico. There's definitely a lot of connection to New Zealand. My wife's a Kiwi. My brother-in-law's a Kiwi. My grandfather was a Kiwi. So I got lots of connections to this part of the world. But I tell you, we're very lucky. We're on a 2-yearly cadence to visit family down here. And we decided, okay, if we're going to come every 2 years, we're going to come in summertime in New Zealand because it doesn't get as cold as Canada here, but certainly winter is pretty long. It's pretty wet and it's pretty miserable. It's a bit like Washington State in the United States. So it's very gray. The gray can set in for weeks at a time. And we're just like, if we can pick any time of the year to come to New Zealand to visit, why would we visit in the middle of winter when we can visit in the middle of summer? And I tell you, it's been stunning since we got here. It's been 25 to 27 degrees every day, sunny, clear, light breeze. I think if you travel back home, so to speak, ever, being able to pick the time you go is a big benefit of living remotely.
That is absolutely true. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Listen, we could talk about the weather all day because I tell you, it's a famous topic of conversation for Kiwis and Aussies for that matter. But look, let's talk history. How did you get into this industry of digital transformation, helping businesses automate, helping businesses integrate systems, helping businesses to see a new way forward, and then ultimately coming up with Flowforge, which is, as I understand it, and again, in all transparency, we've never done a project together, so I have to go with what's on the tin, so to speak. But with Flowforge, it's an automated discovery technology platform, AI-led technology platform. But if you had to go back to the beginning, what got you into digital in the first place?
For me, it has been a developing interest for me for many years. Back to the early 2000s, I was in Canada working in a business solutions sales capacity. And I started to become interested with the idea of business process design. And I guess I should reach back even a little bit further than that. When I was first traveling through Southeast Asia back in 97, like I mentioned, and I was in Singapore one Christmas visiting some family friends. And I was in a pub and I met this gentleman that was at the time working for JD Edwards. And before I had started traveling, My roommate was a programmer, and I was always fascinated with what he was doing. Hardly ever saw him. He was always locked in his room, smoking the keyboard away. But I always thought, I'm not sure I want to be a developer, but I definitely want to be in that space somehow. And when I met this consultant, JD Edwards consultant, and he shared with me what he did. And his role was basically to work with the clients to understand how they're operating and then take that information back to the development team and then build out the solutions for the clients. And a light bulb went off for me right then. And I said, that's totally cool. That's the direction I want to go. Since then, my path has been somewhat non traditional. I never went and worked for one of the big fives or anything like that. But I've been in the corporate world for a lot of years. Most of my time living in Singapore was with different multinationals, VMware, IBM, QLogic. And along the I took a step out of Singapore, joined a Swedish ERP company that was just getting themselves up and running in Southeast Asia. I joined them to help develop out the brand in the region and help them get to growth. And in doing that, I had a lot of opportunities. They had a specific focus on manufacturing companies. So we were going and the traditional walking through the factory and observing their setup and observing their systems all the way from finance to the shop floor. And I loved that. I loved doing that. It was a lot of fun to have the opportunity to walk in and see how many different products are being made and shipped around the world for delivery. And that was the start of it for me there. And then I eventually, now 3 years ago, left the corporate world again and started Innovas. And the full intent of Innovas was to just start to work together with small, medium sized companies, not only manufacturing companies. And first of all, engage with them, um, go through that discovery process. That work has taken us all the way over to Saudi Arabia, as an example, where, yeah, we go through that process of sitting with every department, sitting with stakeholders in each department, um, interviewing them for hours on end, listening to how they're operating, listening to what their pain points are, and then at the end of what might be a 2 week period, bringing all of that, collating all that discovery information that we've been noting down and recording and drawing pictures on the whiteboard of and photographing and trying to bring that all together and synthesize it into a observation report for the client. So that's how we got into it. And it's, yeah, growing from a place of love, a place of passion for the whole process. But along the way, I guess about a year ago now, because really the world is only really about a year and a half into the real profound agentic environment that we're in now, I just somewhat of an epiphany and realized that this AI technology is profound to the point that it can do the job of a consultant sitting in a room having an interview with. And so that's how Flowforge was born.
Wow. And I guess, yeah, it's super interesting. And we'll get into Flowforge specifically in a little bit more detail, but it feels very much, it's hard to, I think, unless you are deep in the weeds as a subject matter expert on something, I think it then is very difficult. Let's say you were a fresh university graduate and you had really no industry experience to speak of, and you'd never run a discovery before. You'd never done a requirements gathering exercise before. You'd never had to create a BRD before. You'd never had to create a func spec. You've never had to do solution engineering. You've never had to do any BA work. If you
Yeah.
didn't have any of that experience and you tried to create something like a Flowforge for industry to help accelerate the process, to help automate the
Yeah.
process, I think it's very hard. I think to a degree, you have to be a domain expert before you know how to efficiently automate the parts of the process that should and can be automated. And is that what you found, that, hey, look, our in the
Yeah.
trenches work at Innovas, and you famously, it says your tagline is digital transformation services enabling industrial businesses to connect every machine, every sensor, human activity, and business transaction into one single source of truth. So true digital transformation for like manufacturers and distributors. Like, I feel that if you hadn't have had the depth of experience that you've had, not just at Innovas, but throughout the entirety of your career, it would have been very difficult to imagine something like Flowforge, let alone create it. Is that
Now,
the sense you
now,
had
now
too?
you're going to surface my imposter syndrome. Yeah, because in a lot of ways, to arrive at a place like this, wherever you arrive at within your career, within your life, and you ask yourself, how did I get here? And how did I come up with this? And I think you're right to I look back and I think, okay, all the things that have happened along my career are somehow coming together now to give me this awareness. And that's not to say that what we have built in Flowforge, for as an example, is a end all be all for everybody's needs. So we still expect that when we're working together with a consultant, Flowforge isn't really something that you just come and pick it off the shelf and start using it, because what we want to do, each consultant has that domain expertise that you're referring to. They have their own way of discovering judgment or coming to a point of judgment when they're working with their clients. That's their unique methodology, if you will. And that's work that we do one on one with the consultants that are signing up to use Flowforge, so that they end up with, they're not really changing how they're going to address or work together with their clients. The opportunity for them now is that maybe they can increase the volume of engagements that they're working on. They're not that scenario that I just described, where you go through 2 weeks of interviews and you're taking notes and you're taking pictures and you're recording, and all of that synthesizing work that has to be done at the end now is greatly simplified, right? Because the agents can kick in and help pull that all together. Um, so there's some unique opportunities to scale the business, but you still have to have that domain expertise. You still have to have that special sauce layered on top of what makes you unique as a consultant. So we do our own discovery work with the consultants that work with us to use Flowforge, so that we encode them and we encode their voice and their methods into the system. So that automation, it's not just automation, it's augmentation, I guess. It's real augmentation of, or dare I say, cloning. Yeah. No, it's just, it's really tuned for them and how they work in their practice.
This is very interesting and timely. And the reason why I say that is because I have been looking at various tools for years. Actually, since I even started my consultancy, I have been looking for a tool, maybe Flowforge. It sounds like Flowforge may have been the tool that I've been looking for. And I haven't been able to find anything that really, truly helps me automate anything in a significant way without devaluing the kinds of discovery conversations I have with clients. Because my discovery starts out, well, a little bit of it depends on the type of client it is, but if it's a manufacturer or distributor, it's about 175 questions, main
Yeah.
questions with follow-up sub questions. I use a Google form to capture some initial information. Then we have discovery workshops to clarify all the responses. make sure I understand them. But the I have learned throughout this 25-year career that when you ask better
Mm.
questions, you get better answers. And so I'd like to think that one of the reasons my discoveries perhaps are better than, say, a competitor or something like that is because I'd like to think my questions have more nuance built into them. They've got more experience built into them. They've got more
Yeah.
peeking around corners built into them. Just because I've
Hmm.
been doing this for 25 years, there is no LLM out there that has my
No.
25 years experience in them. And so it would be difficult for a pure LLM led experience. It would be very difficult for that to replicate the type of experience I'm able to help my clients to have, because there's little tiny little bits of on the fly consulting woven into the discovery process where somebody might say, "Oh, we do it this way." And then I have to unpick that a little bit more and I have to say, "Why do you do it that way specifically? And what is downstream of that? What is upstream of that?" And then I'd say, they might go, "We don't do it this way because we have to do
Mm.
it this way. We do it this way because we've always done it this way. And if you know of a better way, then we'd love to hear about it because we're willing to change our process. If you think we can do it better and more efficiently, then we'd love to hear that." And then I can go, "I had a client that did it this way, and I had another client that did it this way because of XYZ, and maybe this would work for you
Mm.
because of XYZ reason." And so there's these little, it's not full blown business process engineering on the fly, but what it is selective pieces of on the fly consulting based on experience that then I can try to connect the dots in a
Yeah.
meaningful way for my clients and almost adapt on the fly to their specific scenario based on this, going into the
Mm.
data banks of 25 years of doing this and thinking, "Okay, I've seen something similar, connect the patterns, identify the patterns, connect the dots, and then give them some on the fly advice of if they're at a fork in the road and they're
Yeah.
saying, we can go left or we can go right. Can you help us decide which way we go?" And let me put this a slightly different way. And I'm sure you've had this experience because Innovos, I see it as a digital transformation agency. And in my experience, when I was running and building agencies, and one of the reasons why I decided to build my consultancy the way I did was based on the experience I had in agency land, where we would get into discovery with a customer and maybe halfway through day one, if 50% of the answers aren't you the expert, aren't you supposed to be telling us how to do things instead of us telling you how we'd like to do things? And it's, hang on a second, as an agency, we are better structured to capture requirements, not help you identify and structure your requirements. Like, we're not set up as an agency. We really only made money once a project got into the engine room of the business, which is the development team. So any time spent up front with BAs and solution architects and designers and everything else, that was dead money. Like, we would break even on that. And then once the project actually made its way into the
Yeah.
development side of the business where we could truly scale, because you only have so many great designers, you only have so many great BAs, you only have so many great front end consultants and solution architects, but you can usually stock your business with 20, 30, 40, 50 good developers, good enough developers to build a project. And so I realized that many clients, when they first go to an agency, they are simply not ready to engage with an agency because they don't have a good enough process internally to even be able to identify their requirements, to be able to prioritize their requirements, to create a
Yeah.
Moscow rating for all these different things that they do. And they don't even know which things that they do today that they should probably
Right.
question if they should even be doing that thing. And they're just not ready. And that's where I come into the picture often. Agencies will send me clients exactly like that for that messy beginning part where they don't
Yeah.
even know what they don't know yet. And then once I get them all tidied up, once we unpeel the onion, we really identify the true requirements, I challenge them on certain things, we prioritize, I get them ready, and from a timeline expectation perspective, from a budgetary perspective, like, I prep them so that when we get the BRD prepped and we send that
Right.
to an agency, they're not shocked
Yeah.
with what the proposal comes back as. And so I think I just find it super interesting that you specifically said, we are not trying to take all that beautiful experience and
No.
expertise of our consultants out of Flowforge.
Yeah.
We're actually trying
Yeah.
to get it into
Yeah.
Flowforge.
And as you're telling your story there, what was surfacing for me was a knowledge base. You're a knowledge base, right? But you're hard to scale, right? So over time, if you
Yes.
can build up that as you work with Flowforge, you're storing that knowledge in a database that's now accessible in real time. So the LLM, because we know that RAG systems are great for LLMs to gain access.
Yep.
Yeah,
I've been
there you
building them in
go.
Lovable,
Right.
so it's awesome.
And over time, you'll continually tune the model, and the model will become more familiar with your way of thinking and your experience as you go, so that it can start to surface immediately. Because what all that work that you've just described is not going to go away. You still have to have that um, tailored conversation with the client, so that you're one of the biggest things that you're trying to do is establish trust with the client, right? They're bringing you into their business and they're saying, can you help us, because we want to do XYZ, we want to grow to this size or whatever it is that they want to do. And like you said, they're messy, they are just not operationally organized. One of the, you mentioned our tagline, and one of the big pieces of work that we do with customers is that we say, if you want to digitally transform, don't bother doing anything until you get all your sources of data identified and contextualized and cleaned up. Because if you don't have that, if everything's siloed, none of this works.
Works. Yeah.
But what you've described, though, is remains important. And just this tool is, again, I like using the word augment, because it really is just about augmenting. It's just, as a human being, as a consultant, how do we scale ourselves in a way that is meaningful to our business, to our practice, but also valuable for our customers? Because if you say, I'm going to take my 25 years of experience and I'm going to hire a bunch of junior guys that, like you said before, that they don't have a clue. They understand the building blocks of an assessment, but they don't have that special sauce. You're probably going to put your business at risk, right? Your reputation is going to be somehow tarnished. If you can encode yourself into a database, literally, that then learns it trains you over time, suddenly you'd build something that is very powerful. And now that scale opportunity becomes real.
And it feels like Flowforge also has, you've got a vision for it that deals with the most painful parts of what I do today. So when I am finished with the initial discovery process, the questionnaire, the workshops, the stakeholder interviews, the customer interviews, the partner interviews, all
Yep.
those processes that I do, and I've gathered all this beautiful information, and it's almost always remote. So I'm using like Fathom, and I'm using other note takers, and then I'm also recording the sessions, and then I'm also got the notes from the questionnaires, all that stuff. So I've got multiple different formats of data. I've got multiple different formats of feedback. Sometimes they're literally doing a demo
Yeah.
of their existing implementation and saying, we love this about it, but we hate this about it. And oh, when we do this again, we need this to work better, and we don't even need this piece anymore. And our business is different than it was 5 years ago when we did this implementation. And they're giving me, they are sharing a tremendous amount of subtlety and nuance around the must-haves, nice-to-haves, and wish list items, but they're not putting it necessarily in that terminology. And so then when I get to the BRD phase, then I've got to go back. I've got to re-review the AI notes. I've got to go back and review certain portions of the videos. I've got to go back and go, oh, I can't remember exactly what they said for this question and answer. So I now need to go back to the document. I need to re-review it so that I can translate that into a technical
Yep.
solution to meet that requirement. And there's a tremendous amount of re-review of all that stuff I gathered in all sorts of different ways, formats, and means over the prior month or 8 weeks or whatever it was. And it feels like Flowforge would allow me as a consultant to connect those dots faster and easier without having to manually review stuff again, because my memory isn't as perfect
Yeah,
in terms of recall
exactly.
as an LLM is.
Exactly. We never are. We're fallible humans, right? So,
Yes.
and the computer is not. So that's why this technology exists in the first place. But I really think it's important to keep stressing that it's not about taking the art out of the engagement, because there's a lot. You're an artist. Because it's not just about
Yes.
observing systems. It's not just about um, talking to people and hearing them tell you about how they operate or what their pain points are. The art is about being able to go a level deeper and perceive what is their real problem. How do they view this type of change coming into their organization? Are they threatened by it? Or do they welcome it? And because surfacing that is what is going to help to make the engagement or the project a success, right? So that, yeah, none of this is about removing the nuanced elements of consulting. It's just about using the technology in a way that can just make you more effective. And yeah, I love the idea of scaling. That just gets me excited about this product. That if you could do one engagement a month in the past, or sometimes maybe even 2 months, now you can maybe do two
Yep.
or more in tandem,
Yeah.
even. And the other thing as well is that
I almost
now, by the time you arrive on site, you're not a blank slate. You're well informed. And when you start ticking that clock for the client, it's true value for the client right from as soon as your foot hits the accelerator.
I almost think of this like a supercharged AI note taker with an open-ended context window, in the sense that a lot of the AI note takers, like, they're pretty good, right? They're not perfect, but they're pretty damn good. And I remember a day not too long ago, in fact, it was pre-COVID. I remember when AI note
Mm.
takers first hit the market. Like, you were a little bit odd if you, like, I remember a lot of my clients in the beginning, they'd say, "Oh, can you kick the note taker? We're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
really comfortable having a note taker on the call. Can you just kick the note taker out and we'll just have a call?" Now today it is so normalized that everybody brings their own note taker. My clients bring their own note taker.
yeah,
I bring my own note taker. Like, everybody's got one, and it's so normalized that no one even thinks twice about having that, because they've seen the benefit of me, instead of me having to talk, ask questions, wait for responses, and manually type notes at the same time, or have a secretary on the call, or somebody on the call, or a BA on the call taking notes based on the conversation I'm having. Now I can fully focus on them. I can fully focus on the subject matter. I can fully focus on the questions I'm asking, the answers I'm getting, in a free flow of conversation, instead of making sure I didn't miss that one key note that I need to be able to
yeah,
refer back to, because it's a really important thing. And I think we're actually going to get to that place with in-person meetings too, meaning that I think eventually we're going to have a pendant, or we're going to have a recorder on our phone, or we're going to have whatever. We're going to, if you're a sales rep working for a B2B business, let's say you're a manufacturer
yeah,
selling to distributors, or distributors selling to dealers, or whatever, and you're doing a field sales call, you're going to want to have the same high grade experience and
yeah.
follow up that you have with an AI note taker. You're going to want to have that same high grade experience,
Yes.
but with in
They
person
already exist.
conversations.
The pendants
And
are already,
so it's
there's a
going to
company
start,
out
it's
there
going
now doing that, right?
to, yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I think Claude and a couple of others have talked about it.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of them that have talked about it. A couple of them have gone out of business, but there's a couple that are still doing it. And I think that as of right now, those types of note takers, everybody's got questions around privacy, and they're just as uncomfortable about those types of tools now as
Right.
people were about AI note takers 5 years ago. And I think eventually, once everybody's using one, just like everybody's using
Yep.
an AI note taker, it'll become completely normalized. And I think that a tool like yours will eventually become completely normalized too, meaning that
Mm.
once everybody sees the benefits of us having this open-ended context window
Yep.
LLM that's applied to our project, now all of a sudden, instead of just having notes from individual conversations, we now effectively have an AI note taker for the
Right.
sum total of our engagement. And we're able to bring that together and connect the dots in a meaningful way so that when somebody like me goes to write the BRD, I can actually ask questions of the AI based on its monitoring of all the interviews I've done up to that point. And I can go, oh, can you remind me, for example, I could say, oh, I don't remember. I remember they mentioned something in our conversation about lot and batch
Right.
based management in their WMS for a specific reason, but I can't remember what that reason was. Can you tell me what that reason was again? And instead of me having to go back to that specific interview session and re
Yeah.
listen to it, the LLM can actually just tell me what the key point was. And that to me is going to make somebody like
Yeah.
me
Yeah. Exactly.
tremendously more efficient.
Exactly. And we also have the ability to finishing a series of interviews. We call them campaigns, right? So you got a campaign, and then you've got different stakeholders involved in that particular campaign. Once those stakeholder interviews are complete, the consultant has the opportunity to go and then add their own notes or include documentation to support that particular campaign. So it's, yeah, lots of opportunity to um, keep adding the information in there so that when you need to refer back to it, it's there and ready to be accessed.
Yeah, I could see this being super interesting. Even for I work with a lot of platform vendors as well, and so I'm doing not only internal interviews, I'm doing partner
Mm.
interviews for like their SI partner interviews, and I'm also doing customer interviews of customers that use their platforms. And what I do is I then, after I've done all those interviews, I synthesize, I anonymize that information, I synthesize it down, and I pull out themes and I pull out buckets of information where there's overlap in the feedback that I'm
Yeah.
getting back from the customers and the partners. I create that and I build almost like a little matrix of the feedback. And I say, here's the 3 or 4 key themes that
Mm.
kept coming up across all these conversations. So this can help us prioritize what we need to do in terms of product road mapping, what we need to do in terms of marketing, what we need to do. There's themes that are around different things that allow us to make sure that we're being as efficient with our time and our
Right.
resources as a platform vendor as we can be. And you'd be shocked, actually, maybe you wouldn't be shocked, but I have always been shocked at the amount of times I come in, whether it's a manufacturer, distributor, platform vendor, SI, and I ask these questions around when was the last time you did customer interviews? When was the last time you did partner interviews? What were the key themes
Mm.
that came out? What did you do with that information? What is the regular cadence of these types of interviews? Are you creating have you operationalized voice of customer in any
Yeah.
meaningful way and on any regular basis? Do you do CSAT? Do you do NPS? What do you do to operationalize feedback from all the
Yeah.
relevant stakeholders in your business? And do you do that regularly? 99% of the time, the answer is we do not. The 99% of the time, they go, oh, our account manager is talking to the client. And if the client has something to say, then they'll tell their account manager and then it'll make its way up to management or whatever it is. And I'm going, that's all fine and good. But the reality is, unless you operationalize voice of customer, you're probably not going to create
Right.
a consistent opportunity to act on it. And that's the real thing here. And out of one side of their mouth, they're saying we're customer centric. And out of the other side of their mouth, they're saying we haven't interviewed our customers in 18 months. So it's super interesting when you get into those scenarios. And that's why I think being able to do those really nuanced stakeholder interviews and contextualize the questions in
Yeah.
ways that matter to the person you're
But
interviewing, that is where the art is. But capturing that data in
precisely.
a way
Yeah. And so think about those SIs. They're probably running on margins that are challenging to maintain, right? Um, resource restricted, right? Trying to do as much as they can with a limited sized team. And what are the tools that exist today to for voice of the customer, right? What is it? A survey of some sort that you send out to the customer and say, how do you like us? What don't you like about us? And most of the customers are like, oh my
yeah.
God, another survey.
Yes.
But if we can make that so that it's a much easier process, and you collect that data and then you make it available so that you can derive real meaningful insight from it. Now it's something new, something different.
And so, help me understand the technical underpinnings of the way Flowforge works. So, if I understand you correctly, and again, I could be way off base here, you're taking all the recordings, all the Zoom calls, all the questionnaires, all the video VC calls, all the any format of information we're
Yeah,
collecting through the discovery process. We're now turning that into a vector database of information that can be questioned after the
basically, yeah,
fact. Am I
yeah,
understanding that correctly?
that's it. That's what the
Okay.
that's
So you're
what
putting all
the
that content and
LLMs
data
like to
through
read,
that
right?
RAG
Vector.
pipeline. Yes, yes. And they need the cosine data to be able to draw meaningful parallels between disparate pieces of information and data. And the only way they can do that is based on a vector database, right? By basically turning every form of content and data into math, it allows us to be able to connect
Yeah,
dots in ways that
yeah,
humans can't do. Very exciting. Listen, this is very cool. We'll probably have to take this offline, and who knows, maybe I'll be a little bit of a guinea pig for Flowforge. It sounds like it's still
yeah,
pretty early days.
yeah.
You've been working on this for a
Yeah,
year
it's
and a half,
still
right?
still pretty early. We've got a few clients that are gaining some traction with it, but yeah, it'd be exciting if you wanted to join the use case. Mm.
I love it. And how do you charge for Flow? Is it you deliver Flowforge as a SaaS platform with a subscription, or
Yeah, so
how
we
do you
do
guys
that
basically make your
up
money off
front
Flowforge?
work with the consultant. So there's a fee for that. And that's basically
Hmm.
just configuring the
Yep.
system so that it's tuned for their way of working. And then there's an ongoing monthly
Yep.
subscription after that. We also
Okay.
have another
Okay.
model where the consultant can pay by campaign that they want to run, right? Because
Yes.
you might go a couple of months without having an engagement. You don't, it's much easier if you can
Yes.
just
Yeah.
pay for some campaign credits and use the system. So it depends on your requirements and the volume of your requirement.
Nice. Nice. Very cool. And is there anything that Flowforge doesn't yet do that either your consulting clients are already asking you for, or have you already identified other gaps in the market that you don't meet with Flowforge yet that you go, well, we don't do that thing today, but give us 6 months and it'll be doing that then? What is the highest priority things on your radar right now in terms of the
We're
development of Flowforge?
currently dealing with one ongoing interfacing request that keeps coming up, and that's for voice input. So and
Yes.
that came up quite early for us actually, because you've got, especially if you're in a manufacturing environment or an industrial environment where you've got
Oh,
operators on the
yeah.
shop floor whose input you want, input you need, but they're not typers. They're not, and they don't want to sit down and have
No.
go through a list of questions and type it out. They just want to talk about it. That's one that's high
Yep.
priority for us to get sorted out, coming soon. And
And sorry, just to clarify, that might take the form of simply being able to stick a cell phone in front of somebody. If they say something, you record it as a voice note, you upload it into Flowforge, and then Bob's your uncle. Is
well,
that the kind of
how the
direction you see
interview
that going?
process works is that when you set up a stakeholder profile in the system, the you set it up so that it's
Yep.
identified by their role in the company, so that the LLM is interviewing them appropriately based on their contributions to the company. You give their position, you give a
Yep.
little bit of information about what their responsibilities are, and then when that's set up, then you send a tokenized link to the interview interface to the stakeholder. So they just open that up, and if they want to use
Yep.
voice, then that'll just be an option for them to turn it on, and then they'll be able to access that on their phone, however they want to do it.
Phone. Very nice. Very cool. And if you could sprinkle fairy dust on our industry and you could fix or change any one thing about what we do in this world, what would it be?
Flowforge,
Great
fixing that
answer. Great answer.
manual work that consultants have to do. making the work of accurately capturing your customer's experience, current experience, easier to do because that adds value to your customer, right? And I think that's, yeah, I think that's what we really need. Just, and
I love that confidence and I love that positivity about your own platform. And I love the, hey, look, at the end of the day, you got to eat your own dog food. And I'm guessing that there's probably a lot of scenarios and engagements with clients through Innovas that inform the development of this platform. And you probably were eating your own dog
oh
food
yeah,
long before you ever decided
yeah,
to productize this thing. It's a great story to tell because it wasn't like you looked out across the market and said, "Okay, cool. Can we build the next great app that we can charge out build as a SaaS platform?" No, it was like we need to address a problem in our own business. So let's build something that can do that. And then if it works really well, we'll take the Amazon model, which is to turn a cost center into a profit center and spin it off almost like AWS did. And we'll turn that into a
yeah,
service that lots of
yeah,
people can use
exactly.
instead of
That's
just
it.
us.
That's it. But in our industry, there's so many things that we can address. It's we need to humble ourselves a bit, and because we, as business people, I think we tend to sometimes get over focused on profit, and that in turn sometimes means we deliver something to a customer that maybe isn't ideal for them. I'm not
Hmm.
saying that Flowforge addresses that, but I think in general, that's something I think that's important for us to, as an industry of consultants or specialists, is to always try and make sure that we're doing the best for the customer that we can be doing, especially these smaller mid-sized operations that are they're struggling to survive and they're struggling to find ways to grow and to sustain their business.
I love that. Listen, I will drop a link to your LinkedIn profile and, of course, the Flowforge website. But other than that, how do you like people to get a hold of you and have a conversation about this incredible
Yeah,
technology that you built?
I'm always available on LinkedIn, Innovas CEO. You can reach out there or drop an email, todd.abraham@innovas.co.
Easy peasy. Now, listen, as we do come down to the end of our time together, it's been a fabulous conversation. I've learned a ton. This is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal or professional. Mr. Todd Abraham of Innovas and the amazing new Flowforge platform. What is your question
Well,
for me today?
since you're in New Zealand and you do remind me of one of the one of the Bitcoin OGs of the world that's from New Zealand, and we've seen all the volatility recently in Bitcoin. What do you think's going on in that world, in that space?
Look, it's super interesting. And as somebody who got burned pretty badly in the FTX implosion, I'm probably not the best person to necessarily comment on that in that through that lens because it hurt a lot. But I'm very, very bullish long term on stablecoins. I'm incredibly bullish on crypto. I use the Dollar app, which links to Circle, so it uses the Circle stablecoin. So USDC is its medium of exchange, and it is the only platform that I've been able to find from a fintech perspective that allows me to get pesos out of Mexico easily. Like I can get
Yeah,
money into Mexico in about 10 different ways. Getting money out of Mexico, very
right.
hard because there's such tight capital controls
Hmm.
on getting capital out of Mexico that the Dollar app, by using USDC and the stablecoin rails, I can get money out of Mexico in about 3 seconds from my Mexican bank account into the Dollar app. Then in about another 3 seconds, I can get the money that's been converted to USDC into USD in Wise. And then I can use it on my debit card. It's so easy because of the USDC rails. It has made that whole
Hmm.
process just so easy and so seamless that using traditional wire services, I have not had to use a traditional
Right.
wire service in about 5 years. And it's because between a combination of Payoneer and Wise and PayPal and Dollar App,
Yeah.
like between all the fintechs that I use, like I just don't need to do a traditional wire transfer that
Yeah.
costs 3, 4, 5%, takes a week, and is just a pain in the ass to initiate through the bank. And in fact, in Mexico, I would actually have to
Right.
physically go into the bank to initiate the wire. And so, like these fintechs backed by cryptocurrency, and look, I was a pretty big crypto guy for a while there, and I see the benefits of it. I'm still petrified of
Mm.
central bank digital currencies. I think that if we allow that to become the norm,
Right.
then we're in deep crap, because when you have programmable money that is run by the government or
Yeah.
actually run by the private central banking
Yeah.
system, that has me very concerned. The level
Yeah.
of control that they can exert
Yeah.
over your life is pretty terrifying. So as long as this continues to be decentralized, as long as this is independently, all of these technologies are independently
Yeah.
created and lightly regulated, I continue to think they will be completely transformative to the way
Yeah.
we do
I
business
agree. I
online
agree.
moving forward.
Yeah. CDCs are scary, and they're trying to
Yeah,
hijack Bitcoin now by making some technology changes to it. So
totally.
I hope they don't succeed with that and keep it on its own. Then we're okay, I believe. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Listen, been a fabulous conversation. I super
Thanks
appreciate
so
your
much,
time. I can't
Jason.
wait to speak to you again soon. Thank you so much. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.